Hello everyone. So today we have with us Jayashree Gupta. She will be telling us about boot camp, which will be about DP 900. I will tell you to your notice that Jayashree is a DC intern at Google. She is also the chapter lead at GoScript. Over to you, Jayashree.
Thank you, Tasha, for inviting me. So, I think we should start with the session. So, just let me know whether my screen is visible or not.
Yes, it's visible.
All right. So, welcome everyone to the day two for Microsoft Azure Fundamental session on DP 900. So, just let me just give you a quick recap that what we have discussed yesterday. So, basically, we have covered the things related to the relational data, non-relational data, types of data we have, and like basic about the data and SQL queries. Now, today we'll start with some more deeper concept. So let's go ahead. So I think I should skip my introduction because Itasha has already introduced me so well. So let's move ahead with the contents that we are going to cover. So basically, the contents that we are going to cover today includes the relational data services in Azure, then provisioning and deploying relational database services in Azure, then query relation data in Azure, and then exploring the non-relational data offerings in Azure, then provisioning and deploying non-relational data services in Azure, and then finally managing the non-relational data stores in Azure. So let's start. So, like as I have already discussed about the IAS, PAS, and SAS yesterday, now let me revise it for you. So, basically, what a IaaS is. So, it is like infrastructure as a service. Then we have PAS as platform as service, and then SaaS as software as a service. So basically, the Azure provide us all these services, but it depends on the users. Like it depends on the users or the companies. Those are migrating their data from their own premises, their devices to the cloud. So like the services they want, so they it depends completely on their demand and their requirements. So our IaaS, that is our infrastructure as a service, includes our servers and storage. Like it will provide us with the servers and storage, the networks, firewalls and security, and data center physical facility building. Here, like all the data and all the control is within your hardware devices, like within on-premises devices. But the virtual machines are there, their server is there, which is at the remote or at the cloud place. Okay, then we have a platform as a service. So platform as a service will provide you the development tools, database management, business analytics and operating systems, and all the services that was included in the IaaS. So like if you want to have like if you want that Azure should manage your database and that you should not have any like database administrator, then you can go ahead with the PaaS services. Then we have software as a service. So software as a service will provide you hosted applications and apps that was basically focused on your data at cloud, which also includes all the services that was included in the past and all the services that was included in the IaaS. Now let's move ahead. So, what are the Azure data services? So basically, Azure provides you all the data services. Like generally, what we do, like if you want to manage your data, like whole company have to manage their data. Like there is a huge amount of data for a company, and company data is a asset for every company. So to manage that data, it's quite difficult to manage everything on their own devices, on hardware. Like they need to hire so many people to manage that data. And sometimes if your data might have lost, like if sometimes your server has made down or like that. So in that cases, company has to suffer a lot. So that's why they need to move their data towards the cloud. So Azure provides you all the data services with your all the database management system. So basically, Azure data services are provided for the cloud migration. Like if you want to move your data towards the cloud, if you want to migrate your data or your DBMS, then the Azure provide all the services for that. Like Azure provide the services for your MySQL, for the like PostgreSQL, and like that MariaDB as well. So let's go ahead. Now, what is SQL Server on Azure virtual machines? So basically, like for example, you have your data on your own premises, like on your own hardware device, your PC or computer, or like you have your own data center. Now your data is being managed at some SQL server, and like everything is gone like on a small scale, or like in a particular room or particular company. But if you want to move it, like if you want to migrate it towards the cloud, then Azure provides you the virtual machines, like where your whole server that is running on your own premises will get lift and shipped towards the SQL server which is running on a Azure virtual machine, and it will provide you all the things, all the stuff that you basically need to manage your data, to access your data, and to provide the security to your data. So basically, this Azure will provide you the services, different services based on your types of data as well, on the types of the accessing techniques you want, and on the types of administration rules, accessing permission you want. So like this is the way like we can move to the SQL server without having any knowledge itself. Like we, your company, it don't require to have that much knowledge, because Azure will do everything for you, like for your company. So this is the way why we can use cloud as Azure. Now coming towards the what is Azure SQL database. SQL database. So Azure SQL database is basically a platform as a service, because it will provide you a platform to use all the services over your database, over your data, or over your database management system. So basically here you will do these stuff, like do all the managing things, all the accessing permissions, and all everything by using the Azure as a platform. So Azure SQL database will provide you three options for your managing everything, like for your servers, like services. So we have single database, we have elastic pool, we have managed instance. So starting with the first option that we have is single database. So single database is the option which is like very quick. Like for a small amount of data we have, like for a single database, like if you want to do a single database deployment, then you can use this option for your Azure SQL database. So it is just for a small amount of data, and it will provide you the services for that. So it will manage your server and do the configuration. You can do create the tables, you can populate the queries, and you can access your data from this. Like it will provide you, it will be basically focused on the single database. Now coming towards the second option that we have, elastic pool. So elastic pool is the second option for SQL, Azure SQL database. So it's just quite similar to the single database that we discussed earlier. Here, what different is, here you will have different databases. Like earlier in single database, we have only one database, but here you will have multiple database that can share us same resources, like they that can share the same memory, data storage space, or processing power. Okay, so like it could be used for the payroll database, like whenever we required such. So as you can see in this picture, like we have different databases, like multiple databases, and then all these databases are sharing these same resources. They are just sharing these same resources, and we could call it as pooled, like sharing the same resources, like pooling. Okay, so these pools resources are shared by all these databases, and these are very common resources. Those are being shared among these databases. Now moving ahead towards our third option that we have is managed instance. So what is Azure SQL Database Managed Instance? So basically, managed instance depends on the Azure services. Like it will provide you some additional services. It will provide you the storage backups. It will provide you like authentication. It will provide you key vault for your TDE, that is a transparent data encryption, and a couple of Azure platform services that provide the security and supportability features. So basically, this option is for providing more security to your database. Whenever you are migrating your data towards the cloud, then it will provide you more security for that. It will provide you the encryption, it will provide you the key vault, and it will provide lots of the things that you can fix with your data. Like if you want that, if you want authentication for your data, then it will provide you. So, like if we could say, then we have three options for SQL database, that are single, elasticpool, and managed instance. And talking about the most efficient among them, so basically managed instance is the most efficient one, because it is the because in this modernization we require security, because your data needs more security, because it contains some confidential information as well. So you can go with the managed instance if you need more security. Okay, now moving ahead, we have what are MySQL, MariaDB, and PostgreSQL. So basically, we have different database management systems. So these three are most of the common one. We have many more DBMS available, but these are the three very common. So we have MySQL, we have MariaDB, we have PostgreSQL. So MySQL is the most popular DBMS that is available, and it is free. It is freely available, because and it is mostly worked over the open source platforms, or we could say open source environment. Like we have Linux, like we have other open source environments on which we can work with the MySQL. Okay, so like its standard editions and other editions are quite paid, but its community edition is free and you completely use it. And most of the schools, colleges, and in most of the companies, still MySQL is being used. So it's very popular. Then coming towards the like Azure databases, so it will provide, Azure will provide a database for MySQL. Like it has a separate database for MySQL, like on which you can work on. Like it will provide the services to work on the MySQL DBMS. Then we have our second DBMS, that is MariaDB. So MariaDB was developed by the developers of the MySQL itself, and it is mostly compatible with the Oracle database. So MariaDB is just most of the part is similar to the MySQL, but it has one another feature, that is it provides a built-in support for temporal data. It will hold your temporal data, and it's the unique feature of it. That's different from the MySQL part. Now coming towards the third DBMS that we have is the PostgreSQL. So PostgreSQL can store your non-relational data as well as your relational data. So as we have already know that relational data includes your data in the tabular format, and non-relational data includes your structured data as well as your semi-structured data. So you can store all the type of data, like including non-relational and relational, in the PostgreSQL, and you can perform all the operations with that. It and also a part of this, like a part of these types of data storage, it will also allow you to store the geometric data. So like you can work over charts, you can work over graphs, or you can work over any geometric data that you have by using the PostgreSQL. And one more feature is that it is extensible, so it is more extensible than MySQL and MariaDB. One more thing is that, like for PostgreSQL, you have to use a language called PGSQL, though it can be worked by using the SQL language, but it has its own language as well, that is our PGSQL. Now let's move ahead. So we have provisioning. Now, as I have discussed about the like services that we have and everything about the data that Azure offers for database storage and everything. Now, coming towards the provisioning, like you might be thinking like how could we do the setup for this, like how could we use the services, and like what are the ways, like if we don't know anything about Azure, like how can we do this. So provisioning is a act, we could say, of a method by which you can create or configure your service. Okay, now using the Azure, like if you could say a proper definition of provisioning, then provisioning is the act of running series of tasks that a service provider such as Azure SQL database performs to create and configure a service. Okay, so behind the scene, we could say, so Azure will work over the services and resources, then on the which we are the which a person is using, a user is using. So you just need to give the like assignments, you just need to tell them, tell the Azure that I need these services, then Azure will provide you everything with that. So basically on working with the Azure, so Azure provides you several tools to provision your services, to deploy, to configure, or to create your services. So most of these are four. Like basically, Azure provides the four tools, or we could say four tools to use these services or to provision these services. That includes, first one is the Azure portal. So basically by using the Azure portal, that includes a whole GUI. So you can just do the things, or you can set up your services, or you can provision your services just using the Azure portal. Like you can just go to the buttons and you can click there and just choose the correct one that you want, and then you can and deploy your services. Then second we have Azure command line interface. Like you just need to write the commands over there, and it will do the everything for you, like as we have earlier for the cloud shell, like we do for Windows, we do for Windows and other things. Then we have Azure PowerShell. So basically, it is used by the administrator authorities, or we could say admin for that. So PowerShell is also provided by the Azure. You can write your commands over there. You can use the PowerShell to enable the enable or configure your services. Then we have Azure Resource Manager templates. So like for example, if you have your semi-structured data, or like if you could have any other data in the form of documents or other things, then you can do in that way as well. Like you can write your commands in a document. So like you can do the, if you know the like how to write the documents, then you can also configure your services by using the Resource Manager templates. Like it will include the documents in the form of the JSON format. That is your JavaScript object notation. So let's move ahead. And this provisioning part I will show you in the last, like what are the steps for these. Okay. Now coming towards the SQL. So like we have studied like how we can provision the services and everything. Now how to access the queries. Like we have our relational data, like we have our data in the form of tables. Now we want to access it, we want to access our data from that database. So for that, basically we use SQL to work over the relational database. So what a SQL is? So SQL is basically our structured query language. SQL is the language which allows us to communicate to our relational database. It will help us to access the data from our database management system, and it is one of the standard language that is used with the most of the database management system, including the Microsoft SQL Server, MySQL, PostgreSQL, MariaDB, and Oracle. Though these also have their some different syntax or different languages for different database management systems, but SQL is one of the standard language that is followed for the database management system, especially for the relational database. Now, understanding the SQL dialects. So basically we can use different statements, like we have different statements, clauses, queries to perform, or like to operate, so that we can access our data from our database management system. So we have select command, we have insert command, we have update, delete, create, drop, and so many other commands that we can use to access our data. Now, as most of the dialects, talking about the dialects, so most of the popular dialects that we have from SQL, that is TSQL, that is transact SQL. So this version of SQL is used by the Microsoft SQL server basically, and for Azure SQL database, so that we are going to use in Azure. Then we have PGSQL, that is for PostgreSQL, that as I have mentioned yesterday and today itself. Then we have PLSQL, that is our procedural language SQL. So these are the things like that we can use for different database management system. Though SQL is the standard one. Now let's move ahead with the more about the SQL statement types. So basically, we have the two types of the SQL statements to work over our database management system. So one is that you have your table in your database management system. Now you want to work over your table. Like suppose you want to drop your table. Suppose you want to change the name of your table. Name of the table means your entity. So suppose you want to rename it. Suppose you want to create a table. Suppose you want to modify a table. Modify the number of rows, columns, like that. So for that we have DDL commands. That is your data definition language commands. So we have DDL statements. So these are basically used to work over the tables. They help us to create, modify, and remove the tables and other objects in the database. So most of the common DDL commands that we have is create, alter, drop, and rename. So create command is used to create any object in the database, such as table or view. Like we can create the table or view by using the create command in our database. Then we have alter command. Alter command is used to modify the structure of any object, to modify the structure of any table, like altering a table to add a new column, to remove a column, like that. Then we have drop command. Drop command is used to drop the whole table, like to drop the, we could say remove the whole object from the database. Like that, we have table. So table as our object from the database. So we can remove or we can drop our whole table by using the drop command. Then we have rename command. Rename command is used to rename the existing object, like to rename any existing table that we have in our database. Now talking about the data that we have inside our table, like we have a table like customer table, and we have several columns in that, and several rows in that. Now we want to manipulate or modify or delete or insert the data inside that table. We want to work over the on the data that we have inside the table. So for that, we have DML statements. That is our DML commands, data manipulation language commands. So basically, DML statements are used to manipulate the rows in the relational table. So these statements enable you to retrieve the data, insert the rows, insert the values in that, to edit the existing rows, or you can also delete the rows by using the DML commands. So the most common four DML commands are select, insert, update, and delete. So select command is basically used to display, to read, to display, to read, and to the select particular rows from a table, or like whole data from a table. And then we have insert command. Insert command is basically used to insert the new rows in a table. And if you want to add any data and any value in the table, then you can use the insert command. And then we have update. So update is used to edit or update the existing rows values. Then we have delete command. Delete command is basically used to delete the existing rows in the table and data inside the table. So these are about the commands, and there are several other commands as well that we have, and there are several other queries. And if you want to go deeper in this concept, then you can explore this concept, and it is often included in your database management subject that you have might study. Now let's move ahead towards the query relational data in Azure SQL database. So, like, to retrieve the connection information for Azure SQL database, so there are several tools for that. Like, how can you use these tools to query the data that is held in the Azure SQL database? Like, we have a Azure SQL database, now you want to query that data. So what tool you can use? So basically there are few tools that are available by the Azure, so which you can use to operate or to query to the data. So first we have your query editor that is provided by the Azure portal. You have Azure portal, and in that you have a query editor by which you can use to write your queries and access the data. And then we have SQL CMD, that is your SQL command prompt, and it is a command line that is provided by the Azure Cloud Shell. You need to write the commands over there, and you can access the data from there, from your database. Then we have SQL Server Management Studio. Then we have Azure Data Studio, and we have SQL Server Data Tools. So these are all available at the Azure portal. If you can check, then you can see the every tools there. Now let's move ahead towards the non-relational data. Now up till yet we have discussed about the relational data, how do we can provision them, how we can store them, how we can query them, and everything. Now we are exploring the concept of the non-relational data that are offerings from Azure, like all the services that are offered for the non-relational data by the Azure. So basically, if we talk about the first service that is provided by the Azure for the non-relational data is the Azure Table Storage. So Azure Table Storage is basically for the like we could say, as I have already discussed it yesterday, that we have a table. For example, it contains two things. First is your key value, and second is your value. Both the things, like it is basically used for the semi-structured data that we have, like your documents or anything. So your document data is being stored in the form of the values, and that values is not visible to the database management system, and it is opaque for only the insertion, and everything is done on the basis of the key values that we have in our first column. So we have two things here, one is your key, another is value. So key is just we can do everything, like insertion is done with the help of key, and like search is done by the key, so everything is done by the key only. Value part is not visible to the database management system. It's just be converted, your data is just converted into the machine readable form over there, but it's not visible by the database management system. So everything is just done with the help of the key there. So here the advantage of this is that here the row insertion is very fast, because it just go to the key and just insert the rows, and the data retrieval is fast, and it's simpler to scale, we could say, and it's basically used for the semi-structured data. Then it also have some disadvantages as well, like it includes a consistency for the transaction updates, and like there is no referential integrity over there, and it is sometimes difficult to filter and sort the non-key data. Like suppose you don't have any key for any data, so you just need to filter that, or you just need to sort that data. So for that it quite become difficult by using the Azure Table Storage. Not talking about the second that we have is Azure Blob Storage. So Azure Blob Storage service is basically provided for the unstructured data. We could say a blobs. A blob is a word used for the unstructured data here. Okay, so what unstructured data is? So as I have already discussed it yesterday, that unstructured data is your data that is not in the form of the tabular format. That is not in the tabular format. So unstructured data is your data that is your videos, that is your audios, that is your videos, files, photos, and that things that is not included in the particular table. So all these are included in the unstructured data. So basically, this service, Azure Blob Storage service, is basically used for the unstructured data, or we could say blobs in the cloud. So like Azure table storage, you have some blobs there, and you can have to store there. Like you have Azure table storage where you can store these blobs. Okay. Now, basically, this Azure supports three types of blobs. We could say blob is your unstructured data here. So, like we have first block blobs, we have page blobs, and append blobs. So, basic on the basis of their storage and other features, you have different types of blobs you want to store. Like here in this example, we could say that here it is your image data. Your image data is there. Then you have your folders. Two folders is there. Like first folder is your footwear folder. So footwear folder contains your the boots and shoes. So all the images related to the boots is stored there. Then all the images related to shoes are stored there. Then we have other folder, that is your coats folder. Then we have winter overcoats and jackets as the subfolder. Then it contains the images respectively. Like for winter overcoats, we have images related to the winter overcoats. Then jackets, for jackets we have different images for the jackets folder. Now talking about the other service. So other service is your Azure file storage. So basically, if you want to share your file, like for basically for file sharing, this type of storage is used. So it enables you to create the file shares in the cloud, and you can access these file shares from anywhere with an internet connection. So it will exposes the file sharing feature. Like it will allow you to server message block protocol. Like it basically followed that protocol. Like here you can see that you have file share folder, and here your files are available at the cloud apps, and here it was provided on the on premises, but after removing it or migrating it towards the cloud, it's get authenticated, and it provides you a proper authentication for the files you have, and you can share your files on the basis of the access permissions that you have included with your files to any person who can see your file or who can edit your file. Now coming towards the other storage services, or we could say other services that is provided for the unstructured data or semi-structured data. So basically here we have Azure Cosmos DB. So this particular service is provided as for the semi-structured data, because our data is stored in this semi-structured data. We have our data stored in the form of documents. We have a particular documents, like we have a JSON file format basically that is followed for the semi structured data. So any data which is in the form of JSON is stored or is being manipulated or added in the form of the Azure Cosmos DB by using this service. So here your document is stored here, and it will have a key, like as I have already discussed yesterday, that Azure Cosmos DB will store the semi-structured data only, and your semi-structured data including the documents like JSON format have two things. Like it will be involved in the NoSQL database management system, so it will have two things. One is your key, and second is your value is your document itself, whole document in the form of a JSON format. So here the one thing that is different is your JSON document and the data inside it will be visible to your database management system, and you can see it directly. But in earlier one it was not visible. Like we have key and then we have value, but that value was not visible to the DBMS. It was opaque for that. But here the value that is a document is transparent to the DBMS. So that's all about the services and the storage devices. Now coming towards the provisioning of the non-relational data services. Like as I have I already told you that what a provisioning is. So provisioning is the act of running a series of tasks that a service provider such as the Azure Cosmos DB or any other services provides you to create or configure a service. Basically provisioning is the setup. Provisioning is the way we can create or configure or deploy our services on the Azure, like whenever we want to migrate our data on premises towards the cloud. So we can use this. Like it will provide you disk, memory, CPU, networks, services, security, and lots of the more things. Now, I think that's all about this. Now we'll see the steps that we can follow for the provisioning part. So like before going to that, I would rather say that going for the practical part is more beneficial for the people who want to go deep inside in the field of data, like who want to explore this field. But particularly talking about the exam, that is your DP 900, if we don't want to go in the practical part, then it's completely okay. You just need to study the theoretical concepts that I have discussed in the more deeper way, like you want to explore that. Okay, now if you want to explore in the field of data, then you can do this in a practical manner. First of all, let me show you the Azure portal. So like here we have our Azure portal. So basically whenever you go and just search for the Azure portal, then you can find this. Okay, so here this is the first page, the home page we could say for Azure portal. You have these things. Okay, so this is your things. So here you can create a resource, you can do anything with the help of the Azure. Like if you want to work on the database particularly, so you have to just go and here search for like Azure data. Like I have already searched here. So Azure data, so here you can see, like here you can see there are lots of services which are provided by the Azure. So first is like Azure database for MySQL server, like you want to work on the MySQL server or basically focused on the relational data, then you can use this. Then we have MariaDB servers as well, we have a PostgreSQL service as well. Like if you want to work on the non-relational as well as relational data, then you can use these servers. So you can just go and just check on this. Okay, then so these are the services that is already provided here. You can use this GUI for from the Azure portal, and you can do this. Now talking about the provisioning, like how can you do these things, like how can you can configure these services over Azure. So for that we have particular steps. Like for example, for provisioning the PostgreSQL and MySQL over Azure, so how can you do this? So like for this, you just need to go and search for the Azure database as I have showed you. Then you have to then follow this, like Azure database for PostgreSQL, and then further you can see this like for PostgreSQL deployment option. You just need to follow that. What you want to follow, like you want for a single server, you want a server group. So according to your needs, then you have to just create a MySQL server according to your needs. Just follow your subscription, just enter your subscription, then your name, server name that you want. Then if you want to backup, if you want what's your location, then version, and all these things that you want. Okay, then coming towards the configuration for MySQL. Okay, so like here it is for MySQL, the same one. You can follow the same steps as I've discussed for PostgreSQL. You just need to select there as well only. Then we have firewall settings. Like if you want to make your data more secure, then you have to do the firewall settings. So like you can do this firewall settings, or you have to configure the connectivity from the private endpoints. Then you can configure access control, that's for authentication purpose. Like if you want to add security towards your data, and if you want to set up some permission or access control, like who can access your data, and like you have to maintain a hierarchy of permissions in your community, in your company, so you can use this feature as well. So these are the steps that you could follow for that, and I will share all these resources in the end. Now these are the steps that we could follow for relational data, like for configuring the relation data, like I've told, for firewall settings, then for authentication, then access controls and everything. If you want to go in deep dive in the field of like data and just want to really do it, then you can follow these steps and create your own servers and using the Azure. Then we have these, that is your for like configuring the Azure SQL database. Like as I've told for the PostgreSQL, then the same you have to follow for the this SQL, MySQL. So you have to just follow these steps, like everything is mentioned here clearly. You can follow these steps, or you can watch their resources that are already available on their YouTube channels and other things. So you just need to follow the easy steps, and everything is clearly mentioned because it's in a GUI format, so you can easily do these settings and everything. Then coming towards the provisioning of the non-relational data, that is your starting from your Azure Cosmos TV. So you just need to you can use this CLI, that is your command line, by using the Cloud Shell. You just need to copy these commands and just paste your commands and do the needful changes that it is asking for. Like you need to enter your resource group name, you have to enter your Cosmos ID, account number, sorry, account name, and your subscription and all these things. Then you can create a database and container. So everything is mentioned here, like the steps. You can use it using your GUI as well. You can use it doing your cloud shell or PowerShell. So these are the steps that are mentioned here. You just need to do some changes here, and you can just simply copy and paste at your cloud shell or like PowerShell that you are following. Then we have steps for provisioning the other non-relational data that we have discussed. So like by using the Azure portal, you can do this. You just need to go as create storage account, then just go and just do the just fill the information like your subscription, your account name, location, performance that you want, and everything. Then you can simply do this. And if you want to do it by using the command line prompt, or we could say Azure CLI, PowerShell, Cloud Shell, then you need to just do this, just copy paste this command there before, like you have to do some changes over there. So there are different ways you can do. Like if you want to, if you are more comfortable by using the Azure portal, then you can do like that. And if you are more comfortable by using the Cloud Shell or PowerShell, then you can use these steps. So everything is clearly mentioned here. If you want to create your services, if you want to create your database, then you can follow these commands and follow these steps. And this is for the configuration of the Cosmos TV and the Azure services. So these are the again steps here. Everything is mentioned here clearly. So I will share all these resources to you, and I have a quite few resources for the exams as well. Like here, you can see that I have provided some resources. I think whosoever is sharing this PPT will also share these resources to you. Okay, so that's all from my side. I think Tasha, so what do you? I hope you everyone has got the things.
Yeah.
Have,
So I
yeah.
think Jayashree has explained you very well about the bootcamp and all in about cloud and what are the features and how to do it hands on as well with the help of, she also has shared the resources. I think you can just use that resources and this video. And again, thanks again to Jayashree for conducting a session for the DP 900. Thank you, Jayashree.
Yeah, thank you, Tasha. I'm just sharing you the resources um, provided. Okay.
Yeah, so we will be sharing your resources as well, Microsoft, so you guys can just check these resources. Thank you everyone for joining. You're on mute.
I'm really sorry this happens with me all the time. So we have a question from Gurdeep Singh, how to get swags to all the ones who are eagerly waiting for the swags. I have an announcement to make. This is the day 2 of our boot camp, and tomorrow we are going to have day 3. Please join the boot camp. And at the end of this boot camp, by learning the things from this boot camp only, we are going to conduct a quiz for you all, and all the winners of that quiz are going to get the certification vouchers and goodies. For that, you can please join our Discord servers. Here only we are going to give you the prizes and all, and you can also get notified about other initiatives by Azure Developer Community. And if you want any kind of community support, you can please ask over the Discord channels. Thank you, everyone. See you tomorrow.